Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today and appreciate a little bit of patience. We were getting some stuff set up here. I think we are good to go now. So thanks for your patience on the Balto side of it. Myra, whenever you are ready, take us away.
I am ready and I am excited. Thank you, everyone, for being here for what we are calling the real reason your team can't end difficult calls and the three-step process to change that. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't realize. Most escalations don't start with the customer. Whenever I partner with a company for custom training, the first thing that I do is I ask for a random sample of phone calls. I want to hear both sides of the phone call. I want to hear what the agent does well. I want to hear any missteps. I'm looking for opportunities. And specifically, if we're working on de escalation, I am looking for uncertainty. I am looking for the moment where the agent hesitates or they're just not sure. Maybe they backpedal. And I'm listening for uncertainty because what I know for sure is escalations start at that point of uncertainty. It's not when the customer is angry. It's not that the customer just comes out of the gate difficult. We like to think that, but that's not it. It really is uncertainty on the part of the employee when an agent isn't sure what to say, when they're afraid of delivering bad news. And that used to be me. And it's hard to believe based on what I do for a living, but I'm an empath. And it was so easy for me to backpedal, to give in. There are a lot of people that find it hard to say the tough things, or an agent is trying to be helpful, but they end up over explaining. That is to the customer uncertainty. And that's cueing to them, I need to talk to someone else. So that uncertainty is what creates the tension that leads to escalation, that leads to longer hold times, that leads to burned out teams. So we're going to focus today on that uncertainty, and you don't have to worry about it, not after this webinar, because I'm about to unlock the secret to ending difficult calls for your agents. You're going to be able to go take this to your agents. They can end those calls faster with less stress and without having to escalate to a supervisor. And everybody's going to be happy. Now, let me tell you what this training is not. This is not me telling you to tell your agents to just smile through the phone calls. It's not another just be nice to the customers training. It's certainly not give the farm away in order to make the customer happy. It's not theory, and it's not something that your team already knows. Unless they've already been through my training, they don't know this. Now, here's what I know for sure. After listening to literally hundreds of phone calls, because every time I partner with a new client, I'm listening to half a dozen to a dozen random phone calls. After coaching more than 2 million students in my online courses and my in person classes, what I know is the secret to conversation control is psychology. It's in the head. We've got to understand consumer behavior. We need to understand the psychology of anger. We need to understand the psychology of acceptance. One of the last things I'm going to share with you today when we get to step 3. Once we understand how the mind works when it comes to customers and problems, it is so much easier to guide that conversation along with focus and with confidence. Now, there's a missing skill that I identified when I'm listening to conversations, and that is that uncertainty we talked about, of course, but it is agents are just simply not prepared to handle difficult customers. They're prepared to survive phone calls, but they're not prepared to handle the outlier customers. Let me share this stat with you from ICMI. 58% of customer service departments rely on the job training for handling difficult customers. I remember when I was guilty of that over 20 years ago when I managed a customer care department. We trained our employees on our CRM system. They all the policies related to our company, to our customer, to our industry. They knew regulations, and we even gave them a call flow on how to be friendly, and there were points on empathy and listening. But what I did not train my employees on is how to handle difficult customers. And a lot of people don't. We expect them to learn that as they go. And you know what? That is like handing the keys to a new driver, your 16-year-old driving for the first time, handing the keys to an 18-wheeler, okay, and putting them in rush hour traffic without giving them the hours and hours and hours behind the wheel. I remember when my oldest was learning to drive, we had her in driving school, and there was a session just for the parents of the students preparing to get their driver's permit. And I remember the instructor saying, nothing replaces, to use this term, butts in seats. You've got to have that time. Okay. That's where you develop that judgment. So that's on the job training. He said, but they also need to know the law. And that's where I come in. So your job is not to just put them in the seats, headset on. We've got to make sure they know exactly what we expect. We've got to give them the framework. Another stat, only 38% of customer service employees report feeling very confident when it comes to handling difficult customers. Only 38%. That number should scare us. That less than 40% of our employees would say they are very confident when it comes to handling difficult customers. This is something that they will do every day. They're going to talk to challenging customers, and hopefully they're not all unreasonable, but this is going to happen a part of their day every day. If they're not very confident in something they do every day, we know they're experiencing stress. We know that there will be points of overwhelm. We know there will be escalations. So we know we've got to do something about that. And we're doing that now. So get ready, because I'm about to hand you the blueprint for how you can transform how your team handles challenging customers. If we have not met, hello, I'm Myra Golden. I am a customer service skills architect. That means I design training to get your employees where you need them to go. I'm a CX strategist, YouTuber, educator, teaching both college courses and my corporate training, and a coach directly to frontline people and to leadership. A pleasure to meet you. Now, let me tell you a few things. I want to share a few things about what my clients have said and are saying about the method that I'm about to reveal to you. Tacoma Public Utilities, I facilitated this exact training to them in person a few months ago. One of the team leads mentioned that he has been able to de-escalate every call since the training. Customer service representative Jen says, I just want to let you know you're my hero. I loved your content, and it helped me rise to the top as a support specialist who all the difficult customers ended up with. Now, I don't know if anybody wants that responsibility, but Jen wears it like a badge. This person tweeted me, I don't ever remember having to transfer a customer to a supervisor in 5.5 years due to reading and listening to at Myra Golden. This is an agent that reached out to me years ago, and I gave her my training for free. She was struggling with her average handle time, fearing she was going to lose her job. And so I love that she came back and shared that with me. Another customer service agent, before attending your training, I struggled with the escalations. After your training, I've now spent 2 years without needing to escalate a customer to my supervisors, no matter how difficult the issue or how upset they are. Wouldn't you love that? That's from Diane. Wouldn't you love 2.5 years? They don't have to escalate no matter what's going on. Final testimonial I'll share with you. This is from a leader. Myra, your de-escalation training was very helpful during my call center time at Lowe's, and I employ it regularly outside the call center as well. And I love when people can apply it outside, because the more you use the method I'm going to share with you, the more your employees do. If they use it personally, as well as professionally, it becomes so common and so natural, and they're going to use it and they're going to get better. All right, now let's dive in. This is your framework for training your team, and I made it easy. Literally, you could take this, hand it to your team so that they can end difficult calls faster. And it's not about rushing through. We're not going to skirt through anything. We're teaching them how to own the issue, how to get rid of that uncertainty and confidently say what needs to be said. That's bad news. If the answer is no, if it's because of policy or regulation, they're going to be able to do that with so much more confidence. I call my framework the 3R de-escalation method. And this method is years, many years in the making, and you're getting the best version. And I say the best version because I'm constantly improving it. We started out with 10 steps, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit that it was 10 steps in the beginning. Embarrassed because no one will remember, 1, 2, 10 steps. You've got to be able to easily recall it, to retain it. And so through feedback, after training people and getting feedback, going back 90 days later and a year later, over the years, we've drilled it down to 3 steps. The steps go in order. They all start with the letter R. I alliterate intentionally, so it's just easy to recall. And you'll find it's easy and goes in a logical order. With that, step number 1. So what I want you to share with your employees, and I'm going to not only give you the steps, but I'm going to tell you exactly what they need to do, what they need to say. Step 1 is regulate. We need to regulate the emotions of the customer. Anytime we have to say no or deliver bad news, anytime we say what the customer doesn't want to hear, that's the point when issues escalate. It's great if I can say, oh, sure, we'll give you a credit. Yeah, we'll overnight that. But that's not the case. So when things go wrong, that's when emotions begin to spiral. So our first job is to regulate. Now, in chimp society, and it was such a fascinating discovery for me. When 2 chimps are fighting, they will often fight to the death. They'll fight until one of them dies. When it's clear that one chimp is losing, okay, we're going to call the chimp that's losing the beta chimp, the one that's dominating the alpha chimp. When the beta chimp realizes this is over, I am not going to win this. What the beta chimp will do is they will run off and then find a mama chimp, find a female chimp who is holding her baby or has her baby near. And they will grab that baby from the mama chimp, run back to the battleground, and then thrust the baby into the face of the alpha chimp. And now, this is not the alpha chimp's baby. It's just a baby, a random baby that the beta chimp found. He will thrust that baby into the alpha chimp's face. And what happens is immediately the alpha chimp's testosterone plummets. Like it is just gone. And he's all goo-goo eyes and filled with empathy and love and hugs. He's calm. In other words, he is calmed down. And in that moment, the beta chimp gets to live because he has calmed down the alpha chimp. That is what I mean by regulate. So, I'm in the moment, I've given the bad news. The customer is upset. And when I say upset, maybe they're raising their voice or they're saying, get me a supervisor, or they're venting, telling their story, going pretty deep into their story. Whatever is difficult to that agent, that is what's going on. And we're going to regulate, not with a baby chimp, but we're going to regulate with our words. So the first step, regulate. To calm an angry customer, your employees must regulate by acknowledging the customer's emotion, validating their experience. Very often we think, and I find this when I'm listening to phone calls, when I'm doing in-person training, we think we are the bigger person by letting a customer just go off, kind of, have your moment. Kind of like, parents with a toddler, and we've all heard the advice, let them have that tantrum. Just give them that moment, step over that tantrum, don't validate it. We think the same thing works with customers, but it doesn't. So for customers, we have to acknowledge the pain point, identify it and acknowledge, validate their experience. That's how we regulate. That's the baby chimp that we're thrusting into the face of the customer. This is how we calm them down. Exactly how to do it. This is what I want you to share with your agents. We're going to use positive framing before we give them their answer. And let me say this, in step one, regulate. We're not solving the problem. We're not getting into the nuts and bolts. No, our whole job is like the chimp. I want to calm you down. I want that intensity, that aggression to neutralize so that I can say what I need to say and guide you to closure. So, what your employees will do, two things: listen for the emotional cue from the customer. Are they frustrated? Are they confused? Disappointed? Recognizing their emotion is the first step. Step number two, then validate that. I want you to verbally say what you are seeing. I realize this whole thing is frustrating for you. Or if I were in your shoes, I think I'd feel the same way. We're going to acknowledge their pain point, validate what they're feeling without over apologizing, without making a promise we can't keep. We're going to do this in a very confident way, so that we give the perception that we are in control. Let me give you an example of how to do this from one of my own clients. So, one of my clients, and if I name the brand, you would know it. They are a yogurt company, or one of their products is yogurt. And one of the problems I picked up when I was listening to phone calls ahead of the training is customers wanted to know the full ingredient list in their yogurt. And they wanted to know this because typically, from what I could tell on the call, they had an allergy, a food allergy, or somebody they take care of has a food allergy. So they wanted to know the full ingredient list so that I know that this product is safe for me, my child, or the students in my daycare, or the kids in my daycare. The problem with that is my client did not give the full ingredient list. It was, their policy was not to give it. It was almost like KFC. When I was younger, in the commercials, they would often talk about their 11 herbs and spices, and that was their big secret. You don't get that on their website today. They're not going to give you the list of 11 herbs and spices, because that is their secret sauce. Same with my yogurt company. So agents were saying that that is our proprietary ingredient list. We don't share that. Customers would push back. So I said, okay, here's how we're going to regulate. My job is not to change your policy. My job is to make the agents' lives easier. I chose to regulate. Again, we're putting the baby chimp in the face of that angry customer to get them to calm down. I regulate it in this case with a method called feel, felt, found. It's a tried and true sales, actually, modality to help people overcome objections. But I'm not using it for sale. I'm using it to acknowledge the customer's pain point and validate their experience like this. I can relate to how you feel. And I'm speaking personally. My daughter actually has a walnut allergy. So when I'm in training my client, I'm using my own experience. I can relate to how you feel. My daughter has a walnut allergy. And like you, I have to know what's in the food my daughter eats. We've had other customers share your concern. They felt like you do. And here's what we found helped them. So the regulated response is to validate by saying, I get how you feel. Other customers felt like you, and here's what they found helpful. Okay. So all of that is the same as thrusting the baby into the mama, the alpha chimp's face. Now that's part one. Part two of this is our labels list all known allergens. While other customers couldn't get the full ingredient list, they could spot the specific ingredients known to trigger an allergy, because all labels list every ingredient with a known allergic reaction. So that is a regulated response. That is all about calming the customer. And the biggest part of that is the feel, felt, found. And there are many ways to regulate, but I want to sum that up with you're acknowledging a pain point, identifying a pain point, and acknowledging that emotion. And you don't have to use as many words as I did, but I wanted you to see a pretty dramatic and powerful example. Regulation lowers the temperature and creates calm. That's what we're doing. We're trying to lower the temperature, get you calm so that I can share what comes next, guide us to the next steps. A warning for you: step one is so powerful. Just like with the throwing the chimp in the alpha chimp's face, it really does create calm. Your employees are going to find that the customer is talking less, they are listening, they are open. It is so powerful that your employees will want to stop there. I've had people tell me that in my workshops, I get that feedback, but we can't stop there because there's always a chance if I go back, if I'm doing some research and I find that, gosh, the option I hoped would work for you doesn't work, or something might set the customer off. Maybe there are two issues in the phone call. I want you to continue with steps 2 and 3 because we're going to keep the customer regulated, keep them calm. We're going to keep them out of that emotional right brain. So with that, we're going to move right into step number 2, step 2 of 3, which is redirect. So redirect, here we are, if you need it, but you've got to have it in your back pocket. We're going to neutralize any aggression and we're going to point the customer toward our options or the solution or the next steps. So on the screen here, I hope you can tell what it is. This is a bedroom and a bed on fire. And I love this powerful analogy. During the pandemic, I read a book by Nurse Hadley, who is a hospice nurse. And during the pandemic, Nurse Hadley got famous on TikTok. She went viral. I guess that's what the kids would say. She went viral for sharing her kind of diaries of what it's like to work with terminally ill patients. And then she wrote a book and about some of her experiences, and I found it fascinating. I had just gone through having my father in hospice care and my mother-in-law in back-to-back years. So that's what brought me to the book. In the book, I never would have imagined I would have gotten a strategy that I would later teach in a de-escalation workshop. But Nurse Hadley talks about one of her patients who has Alzheimer's. And Nurse Hadley makes home visits. So she gets a call from the husband of one of her patients. And the husband says, I can't get my wife to go to bed. And I've tried everything. And so Nurse Hadley, doing probing, finds out why. The patient believes her bedroom is on fire. Okay. And if you've ever dealt with someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, this will make sense to you. And I have. And so Nurse Hadley said, so is the room on fire? And he said, no. So she asked the normal questions, did you just blow out a candle? Is there a smell of smoke? Is, a smell of fire coming from the kitchen? Is it a grass fire outside? And the answer was no to all of this. And the husband said the bed, absolutely not on fire. But she thought it was on fire. So Nurse Hadley's giving him all of these verbal cues and statements, things to try, and nothing works. So Nurse Hadley, and this is all over the phone, hangs up and says, let me call my supervisor to get some help. So she kind of escalates to her supervisor, explains the situation. And the supervisor says, well, asking Nurse Hadley, would you go to bed? Would you lie down in a room that was on fire? And Hadley said, well, no, but her room is not on fire. Her husband assures me there's not even the smell of smoke anywhere. She said again, would you lie down in a room that is on fire? And Hadley again said no. She said, well, why would you expect that your patient would do that? And then she explains the solution is you're going to have to move the bed, because she didn't believe the bed was on fire. I may have said that. She thought the room was on fire, but not the bed specifically. So the supervisor said, I want you to go to your patient's house. You and the husband move the bed to another room that is not on fire in her mind, because in her mind it is on fire. Nurse Hadley said that will never work. The supervisor said, if it doesn't work, call me back, but it will. So she goes to her patient's home, explains it to the husband. They dismantle the bed, which I'm sure you know is no small feat, and they move it to a room, another room, I believe it was a dining room, and just set it up. And the moment they got the bed set up, the patient got in the bed and went to sleep. That is what redirection is. It doesn't, you can't argue with the customer's reality. I mean, you can, but there will be a lot of back and forth. If the bedroom is on fire to her, let's get to the point of how can I solve the problem that you see. So how do we move the bed with a customer? Really, it's the same thing. We're gonna have to get off of that hot point, off of what is striking them. But I'm going to give you a 3-step method that I love. I call it 3W because you're going to explain what 3 times. So to redirect when I don't have all the answers, when I have to give bad news, when the customer is off the charts upset, my favorite way to redirect is to explain here's what we know, here's what we've done, and here's what's next. This is as powerful as moving a bed out of a burning room. Now, all you're doing is explaining in a neutral statement here's what we know so far, here's what we've done. And if you haven't done anything yet, sometimes you haven't, then maybe it's a 2W. Here's what happens next. Let me give you an example. This one, actually, I was the customer. Usually my examples are from my clients. My husband was off the charts mad. Like if escalation is a 10-point scale, I'd put him at about an 8.4. We rented a car and valet parked it in a hotel. And the next day when we go to get our car out of valet, it is wrecked. So my husband is absolutely pissed. And this young valet, a young man that I would say was maybe 22 at the time of this, de-escalated my husband by explaining here's what we know, here's what we've done, and here's what's next. And I tried to capture this as close to verbatim as I can to show you how powerful this works. Now, my husband, let me describe his intensity. He was loud, causing a scene in the hotel lobby, like other guests are looking. My kids or our kids are like, ooh, daddy's mad. I'm feeling embarrassed, and he's demanding a manager. So that's what his escalation is like. The young man, when my husband finally let him speak, and it took me putting my hand on my husband's shoulder saying, let's just hear him out. Let's hear what the young man has to say. Here's how this young man de-escalated. He explained what we know. He said the accident happened last night in our parking garage at 7:42 p.m. The driver was in a white Honda Civic, so he gave us all the details, explaining that the driver tried to self-park in valet. When one of our people told him he couldn't do that, he got upset, sped up, hit 3 cars, and then left the scene. Okay. So he explained to us, here's what we know, giving us all the detail. And he also had a piece of paper with the make, model of the car and a witness's name. Then he went into, here's what we've done. We filed a claim with our loss prevention team. We have 2 eyewitnesses, and we filed a police report with the Austin Police Department. And here's what I noticed at this point. I was already teaching my 3W method in my de-escalation workshops at the time of this. I didn't realize initially that this young man was using a method that I teach, a method that I actually learned from a former vice president of a company I worked for. But then I thought, my husband, who was like an 8.4 in intensity, embarrassing me, making the kids uncomfortable, causing a scene. At this point, after the guy explained, we filed a police report, when he explained what we'd done, I noticed my husband's body language relax just a little bit. I noticed that my husband was no longer interrupting. He was no longer leaning in and hovering over the guy. And I thought, okay, the young man explained what we know. He explained what we've done. He's using my 3W method. And I said, I know the next thing is going to be, here's what's next. And that's exactly what it was. He said, you're going to also need to file a police report. You need to notify both your insurance company and your rental car company, and the insurance company will go after the driver. Now, my husband wasn't thrilled, okay, but I can say he went from about an 8.4 to maybe a 3.5 in intensity. He stopped interrupting. His body language softened. He didn't make the demand for a manager anymore. And now we were able to have the conversation of what happens next. When I teach the 3W method in my in-person workshops, and we do the surveys afterwards, this is the part that I get the highest rankings on. So when we're talking about redirecting in my in-person workshop, I usually give 5 different redirect tactics, online too, 5 different ones. This is the one that agents love the most. It's just easy. I can explain, here's what we know, here's what we've done, here's what's next. If we haven't done anything, it's 2W. Here's what we know, and here's what's next. People can see in the workshop, and we practice real scenarios, wow, like I can use this. And then when I get feedback 90 days later, it's still the biggest topic. So your employees are going to love that. What redirection does, to sum this up, is it points the customer to a solution. And it builds on that calm. When you regulate it, you shifted your customer out of the emotional right brain to the left logical brain. Redirection, the reason I want you to keep going, even if you were totally successful in bringing down that intensity with step 1, the redirection is going to build on that and point you to the solution, which is the final step here, resolve. So resolve, we can't just stop, okay? We've got to confidently guide them to closure, and whatever that is, next steps, whatever that is. And I also kind of refer to this as the psychology of acceptance. We've got to get the client to accept our solution, our word as final. To do that, your employees are going to have to acknowledge the emotional loss, use psychological framing, and have a confident close. I've got a slide on how to do that, but I'm going to just jump right to my case study, which is going to paint it quite clear. So I have a utility customer, another utility customer, where they reach out to me actually for conversation control. And listening to phone calls, I determined that discovered one of their problem categories had an average handle time of 19 minutes. I think it was 19 minutes and 33 seconds. So I'm going to show you how I applied resolve to get that down to just over 4 minutes. So the situation was a customer is calling to establish water services. In this county, the debt of a water bill stays with the meter. So let's say I am renting a house and I move. I didn't pay my current water bill. I didn't even pay last month's because I knew I was moving. And then someone moves in. Let's say Katie moves into this house. She calls the utility to establish water. She thinks she's going to pay like a $30 deposit. She finds that, in addition to your deposit, you're going to have to pay the debt of the former tenant, me. And let's say my debt is $280. And so she's discovering I've got to pay over $300 to turn on water. And 280 of that is not even my debt. It sounds ridiculous, but it really is the case with my clients. And they'd be on the phone for over 19 minutes trying to explain this to the customer, who is understandably irate, who very often need, get me a supervisor. There's profanity, there's shock. So here's how I applied the resolve step to get the psychology of acceptance to them. The agents were saying prior to working with me, the debt is attached to the meter, regardless who accrued the debt. ABC utility is not going to turn on water until the bill is paid. Factual, but nobody accepted that. So I said, okay, we're going to have to get people to accept that. Here's what I came up with in the psychology of acceptance. As a solution, I have 2 suggestions. First, you need to talk to your landlord. Tell them there's a debt on the meter and that you can't turn on water. See if they'll work something out for you. The second option, and I would do this immediately, look carefully at your lease to see if any clause protects you in this situation. Now, I'm going to highlight the psychology of acceptance, which are the primers. To get people to accept your word as final, even when that word is not what they want to hear, even when the final answer is still a headache for me, it is the worst possible outcome still. But the agent's job is to explain it and drive it to closure. We do this with what I call psychological priming, or actually not what I call, it's called psychological priming. We use words and phrases to prime the customer to hang up in this situation and talk to someone who can help, and to make them feel like they have options. Generally speaking, the more options a person feels they have, the more likely they are to calm down on their own. So the words 2 suggestions make people feel like I'm in your corner, you've got options. You need to talk to your landlord. I'm trying to get them to hang up and talk to someone who can help. Second option, I want you to fill options. I do this immediately. That's to evoke a sense of urgency to get them to hang up. Now, this priming statement was a lot. It's a whole paragraph, but here's what we got. Average talk time was 19 minutes and 33 seconds, average handle time, before I gave them this step. After 4 minutes and 28 seconds. This is how we wrap things up. And then a confident final word. I know this isn't the answer you were hoping for, but I'm glad we found a way forward. Or I'm confident this will work out for you. Or once we take the next step, we'll be all set. So when you do that, the psychology of acceptance is I'm going to acknowledge your pain point. I'm going to drive you to closure and confidently nail that down with, instead of let me know if you have any other questions, which to me leaves the door open. Now that we have a plan, we're all set. I want you to have a great rest of your day. All right. Wow. Let me take a breath. We covered a lot in a few minutes. This is exactly the framework that I hand to frontline people. And I want you to do the same thing. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you feel inspired, but I don't want you just inspired. I don't want you just learning. I want you to take action. So here's my action item for you as I close and hand things over to my friend Katie. If your team is improvising their way through escalations, if I would listen to their calls and hear that uncertainty, which opens the door for escalations, the first step is I want you to give them my 3R de-escalation method. You're going to get, I believe you'll get access to the recording. You've taken notes, maybe. Give this to them so that they can confidently bring interactions to closure. The 3R de-escalation method is going to give them confidence. It's going to slash talk time. It's going to take stress off. You're going to get fewer escalations. Now, I gave you a lot. I threw a lot at you. And I promise you, and I know this from having over 2 million students, these strategies are powerful on their own, but paired with the right tools, that's where the magic happens. Imagine if you could have support, give your agents support in real time in the conversation to be prompted on how to regulate, like exactly what to say, prompted on the best way to neutralize aggression, redirect, and that you could have support in how to coach them in the moment. That is what we call an AI workforce. So to talk about this, I'm going to hand things over to Katie at Balto to talk about how we can put my 3R method together with their solutions and make this so much easier for you. All right, Katie, tossing things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Myra. That was amazing. My name is Katie Marino. I'm a customer success manager here at Balto. I'm going to show you 2 ways that we can take some of these great strategies that Myra just covered and put them into practice into your call center using Balto. So first, we're going to take a look at the Balto real-time guidance agent application. Balto is a desktop application that's installed on all of your agents' machines. It integrates with your cell phone system so that it automatically starts and stops with every phone call. So what's happening is Balto is listening to the call and it's able to provide guidance to your agents with what to say based on what's happening in the conversation. For example, if I were an agent talking to a frustrated customer and they said something along the lines of, I am so frustrated, can I please just speak to a manager? I need to get this taken care of. You'll see that I'm instantaneously prompted with some talking points to help guide me through that conversation. I'm so sorry for the trouble, happy to help you get this sorted out, and so on and so forth. This content is completely custom, so this is a great way to implement some of those strategies that Myra talked about into your real-time guidance application for your agents. Of course, this content or these prompts aren't just limited to escalation situations. And as we just learned, escalations start with uncertainty. So this is a great opportunity to give your agents the correct information at the right time to avoid it getting to this point in the call altogether. Okay, so that's how we can help folks on the front lines, the people actually taking the calls. I now want to show you how we can help managers better coach their agents. So let me resituate my screen share here. Oops. 1 second. All right. Okay, so now what I want to show you again is how Balto can help your managers better coach your agents and continue that or encourage that continuous improvement. I work with a lot of supervisors and floor managers, and what I often hear is that they tend to know who needs coaching and have a general idea of what they need to improve. But where the pain comes in is actually preparing for those coaching sessions. Oftentimes, I hear that they'll do random samplings of calls and hope that they find a good, interesting nugget to coach on, or they go off of call dispos or call durations, which is a little bit more pointed, but still somewhat of a mixed bag. So finding calls and listening to those calls is very time consuming, and that's a task in and of itself. And when things get busy, as they often do in the contact center, a lot of times coaching is the first thing to get canceled. Again, it's time consuming, and pulling your agent off the floor when your call volume is high is a really tough thing to do. So I'm sure some of that resonates with you guys. And so what I'm going to show you now is Balto coaching. So the idea here is we want to take some of that painful prep work out of your coaching sessions with your agents. Balto coaching will help you automatically uncover calls that we've identified as coaching opportunities based on the behaviors that you care about. So when you get into your coaching dashboard, what you can do is select an agent that you want to coach on. And I know, my agent, Katie Marino, my hypothesis is that, she's had a lot of escalations lately. I think that she's not doing a great job of asking the proper follow-up questions. I don't think she's probing the customer appropriately, but I need to find some evidence and examples of this happening so that I can properly coach her. So what I'm going to do is just generate a coaching session right here in Balto. It's scanning all of this agent's calls that she's taken in the last 30 days. And now I am presented with examples of calls that we've identified as coachable calls where she could perhaps use a little bit of coaching with this specific behavior that I want to focus on. From here, you can, of course, you can review the full call record if you prefer to do the more time-consuming way, see the full transcript, listen to the audio, that's all there for you. But we also provide you with these nice, succinct, AI-generated summaries, where it not only summarizes the call for you, I really like this because it actually tells you why we've identified this as a coaching opportunity. For example, there's no clear evidence of follow-up or probing questions, they did not dig deeper, therefore this agent did not ask sufficient follow-up questions. From here, once I feel like I've gathered enough evidence, I feel like I have a good understanding of what's happening on Katie's call. She's really not asking enough questions. I now want to provide her with feedback. I don't want to have to pull her off the floor. This is where you can close the loop using the Balto platform. So I'm going to come in here and provide some feedback. Hey, Katie, remember the 3 R's? And then you can elaborate and discuss specifically what you want her to do on the next call. Once I hit review and send to agent, I'm going to reshare my Balto app so you can see exactly what the agent sees and show you how we close that loop between managers and agents. So now my piece of feedback that I just provided in Balto Cloud is now available from the agent's view right here in their Balto application. They have a little coaching tab. They can see, okay, my manager provided some feedback. I need to remember the 3 R's. And here's some examples of calls where I maybe didn't do a great job of doing that. So I can see exactly what she's talking about. I know we are a bit over time here, so I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. The one last thing I wanted to say is that we are running our sales team is running a promo. If you want to go ahead and get a demo scheduled of Balto in the next 15 minutes here, we will provide you with a $50 Grubhub, DoorDash, or whatever delivery service you prefer, gift cards that we will, lunches on us. There should be a QR code on your screen to scan it and get a call scheduled, or you can put a note in the chat and we'll help you get that set up. But thank you so much, Myra. This was amazing. I think that's all I got for you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.